Welcome to the destiny of your soul. Angela said I'm going to do the introduction today, so I wanted to do something with a little bit of flair.
Welcome, that was flary.
Spyrides. I'm the author of Decisive Destiny and the Decisive Destiny movement.
And I'm Angela Talent, and I'm the author of Poems from a Lost Soul, and I also write the boutique poetry for this show, and I am the host of the Relatively Damaged podcast. So welcome to the show. Today's topic is how to be decisive in decisions that shape the rest of your life. And I'm going to pull a quote, of course, right out of Kyle's book, because I'm good at that. It's actually the first sentence in this chapter. It says, Charles Allen said, when you say a situation or person is hopeless, you are slamming the door in the face of God.
Yeah.
We're going to switch sides here, so it looks like I'm looking at you instead of...
Look at that.
Look at that. There's flair from both of us.
I know. No one's slamming the door.
I lost your volume a little bit.
It's all right. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, I can. Hopefully our listeners can hear you. That's what matters to me.
Okay. Let me just...
It got super quiet, but maybe it's because I switched you sides. I'll switch
Don't
you
be
back.
switching things. Don't be switching things.
Yeah, see, nothing. Nope, I didn't touch tech. We've got somebody watching. They're like, yeah, they botched it. No, we didn't botch it. This is just how we learn.
How we roll. It's how we roll. Exactly.
Yeah.
Is that all right? Can you hear me all right?
I can hear you. You just sound quiet. I don't know if our listener can tell us if they can hear you. Okay, that would be fantastic.
Okay.
Let's see. I mean, I can hear you. We can make it work. I just when we.
That's what happens, folks, when you play with buttons. When you push too many buttons, and you.
I can hear you. I don't know what happened. It got better. Oh, well, it's Jan. Hey, Jan. He says we both sound perfect.
Thanks, Jan. Well, what I did actually in the back studio of Restream just then, I turned off noise reduction. And what happens, people that are editing, is that sometimes when you reduce noise, if it's not a high-tech editing software, it cuts volume in order to reduce surrounding noise. So I think for me, maybe this light is making a noise. But anyway, this is not a tech show or a photography show. This is...
That's fantastic to know.
Yeah.
But so we had homework last week, and I forgot to pull it up so that I could address it really quick. So bear with me just a second while I pull this back up so that we all know what we did last week. It would help if I opened this week's show notes because this has last week's homework on it.
That's all right.
So last week's homework was answering the questions. How do you find strength in a challenge? Think of the last time you were in a struggle. What did you do to get through it? Number 2, how have you recently challenged yourself? Number 3.
That was your one, I think.
Yeah. Probably. And when was one time that I surprised myself? That definitely was yours. When did my abilities exceed my expectations or my self-worth?
Yeah. So guys, if you didn't do the homework, the whole point of the show, and one of the reasons Angela and I discuss homework, is that we want to, and the same reason, like for me, I wrote the book, was I wanted to have something that was implementable, that was actionable. We get so much information, and information is not hard. Hello, Malcolm.
Hey, Malcolm.
And Jan Ferguson. We get so much information, but the question is always, what are we implementing? What are we trying on? What are we changing? And a lot of times, I was chatting to a friend last night about this, and he was talking about different methods. There's different methods of basically, it's a technique going back into your maybe inner child, maybe your younger self, maybe your spiritual being from, we're going straight to it from the start of the show, but going into your spiritual being from many lifetimes ago. And it's basically, you've carried some baggage, and this is what I discussed at the start of the book. You've collected some things that you're aware of, some things that you're not aware of. And if you think about it, like survival has been our, our cells remember surviving, like our heritage. Think of our heritage, continual surviving. So in order to survive, it will protect us by saying, stay away from those types of bushes, stay away from that, be careful when this happens. When you hear a loud bang, like hide, and all those sorts of things. And we learn a lot of things, as a kid we come out like pure and bountiful, and nothing's like, no chains are on us, nothing's holding us down, we can go and achieve it all. And then we get kind of taught incorrect things, we get indoctrinated in the incorrect way. And oftentimes there's so much information in the world, it's not about just going and grabbing new information, it's about what do I actually need to like light the fire to and bloody burn away and cut off. What agreements, Don Miguel, like the Four Agreements, like it's a great book, but the philosophy of it, like what are the agreements that you've made in life? So what agreements do you actually need to disband so that you can actually move forward? And I think that's really the point of like us bringing up the homework and doing the exercises. And just a little, I don't know if you've shared this with everyone yet, but we're working on a workbook in the background, which was Angela's brilliant idea, like how to put this all into practice. And that's the whole point. Like, how do you implement the learnings? We don't just want to talk about philosophy, we want to embody the philosophy we're becoming.
Yeah, applying it to life. And I just want to touch on something real quick, and I'm pretty sure Malcolm might know the answer to this question, or to this statement,
cool.
or be able to tell me if I'm going to get it, if I get it wrong. But our brain waves, and even Jan may know the answer to this question now that I think about it, our brain waves are much slower when we're younger, up until around the age of 7 or so. So we're really just, it's like, actually, yeah, Jan might know this answer too, because he does hypnosis. And so we're just accepting, not challenging any information up until that point. And then it's like we don't even know that we have all this information inside of us, and we're running on subconscious behavior, what we believe the world to be, which is the environment we grew up in, and there are rules and guidelines that go with every single family, right, and every single person. And then we get a chance to challenge them as we get older. So it's really hard, though, to know what those beliefs are, because they can be very, very subconscious, so much so that we don't even realize that we have that belief. And then we operate, and it's called a heuristic. So what our brain does is it creates these really shortcuts, because our brain likes to make everything easy. And then we just make these snap judgments, and we don't check it. We don't go, well, is that true? We just don't. Like, even confirmation bias. You're certain someone is behaving a certain way and they're doing it to hurt you on purpose. How do you know? Right? Which is huge. And so we can really get stuck in confirmation bias, and in these heuristics, these like subconscious programs that are just running. And so even when we make decisions later on, we can base those decisions on programs that really aren't helpful. So I think we have to check those programs, which is why it has to be applied. You have to do the work, and it's not easy work. I think sometimes what happens is we go and say we want to do the work, and we get into it, and it feels awkward and weird and foreign, and then we just stop because sometimes we don't just stop. It's painful, yeah, but sometimes we don't stop. We just subconsciously create other things in our lives to distract us with the next step we want to take. So then we don't take that next step.
Or we bound new agreements. Oh, I don't have time for self-work. Oh, I can't, I can't do that, like, oh, I had Uncle Freddie who, when he went deep into himself and tried to cut away some of the baggage, he unlocked something and then became a crazy person. Like we bind these sort of agreements and other experiences. It's like, I know someone in my friend's family circle that's like, oh, I had a coach once and they were a bloody scam artist. And it's like, okay, well, that was that coach. there are other coaches. Like, just that thinking of, and it's such like that thinking is so damaging. And I've had it. I'm not judging from like my ivory tower. Like we've all had it, but that kind of, okay, I've had this bad experience with this one person, and it's the same thing as like you said, our subconscious remembers, and then it plays through our conscious. I've had this one bad experience with this one person, so now I'm never going to get on stage again or whatever it is. Here we go.
Let's see. Jan did. He made a comment. Let's see. I'm going to close this and see if I can read the whole
While you
thing.
do that, I'm just going to get a notepad because I might take some notes.
So Jan says the conscious mind will delete, distort, and generalize what it experiences through the senses. What it doesn't need can easily go into the subconscious depending on what the stimulus is. If it's not really needed, it gets deleted. It can, let's see, I'm trying to see it and it's not letting me see it. Hold on. Let's see. Oh, I'm going to show Malcolm so that I can read Jan's. I'm still learning. If it's not needed, if it's not really needed, it gets deleted. It can be distorted and become more along the lines of your vision of the world at that time. So really, I think what Jan is saying, like, the conscious mind will delete, distort, and then things slip into the subconscious mind depending on what's happening. And if it's not really needed, then it'll get deleted. But sometimes it gets kept and it gets distorted. Like, okay, that actually brings up a really good point. I remember reading a book. I read a lot of books, so I don't know which book this was. And this person had actually written a memoir of some sorts, and they were certain that they remembered the story, that their father had read a certain book to them. And they wrote the memoir, and then they went back and looked, and what they found was that there was no possible way it could have been their father reading this book to them, because by the time it was published, he had passed away already. So even our memories can trick us sometimes.
It's true. It's true. It like, I think, what Ben said there, the word he used, distorted. I think that's a great word. It's kind of like when you think about, and actually this is something, now I'm remembering parts of what I've actually written, because every time you say I'm going to quote you, I get terrified. I'm like, what? Wait, what did I say there?
I'm sorry, I put you in fight or freeze.
It's something new that that we're getting ready to, and I'm going to have to quote some of your poems. So the problem is when I quote a poem of yours, like, you know how to read a poem because you wrote the poem, and poems are powerful. Like, and actually maybe I should, because the way that I read your poem maybe it'll be different to the way that you wrote it. Maybe I'll give impact or some pause to certain areas that you didn't quite intend, but for me it made more impact. So. But yeah, anyway, by the way, Angela's poems book is incredible, really, really incredible. But the point that I wanted to make with Distorted, in the book I use photography as an example, because in photography, when you bump the noise up, which is basically when you bump the ISO up, and ISO is just a setting that actually increases light on the sensor, but without using the aperture or the shutter speed. It's just basically a setting that increases. It's called isometric. It's like basically a setting that increases the light without you using the lens, right? Using the lens, like creating more light coming in through the lens, or opening the shutter for a longer period of time, allowing more light to come through over time. So it's using another method of adding light, but the problem with that method of adding light is that, so with the two other methods, with aperture, with your lens, when you open up, you actually get more of a shallower depth of field, right? And so you get like this, this pen will be in focus, but everything else will be out of focus, but you've opened up to let more light in. With the shutter speed, when you open up by lowering the shutter speed, you allow for more blur because the shutter speed's at a lower number, so it's taking the photo slower, so things could move in the time that it takes when the shutter closes. And if you're not adding lights into the scene, then your only option, if you want to keep your shutter at a certain point, you want to keep your aperture at a certain point, is to increase the ISO. And the ISO adds noise, right? And so it adds a grain, it adds a bit of purple fringe. Like it looks different with different scenarios, but it really does add something that most photographers want to take away. And then noise is also like the gain of volume on radio and audio. If you're trying to bring your gain up, like, and it's almost like you're bringing it up artificially, or you're not really bringing it up by putting the mic closer to you, like, or me talking louder. It's the gains being pushed up, and then it can actually add disturbance and noise. And that's what I think when he talked about distorted. I think a lot of times, and what you're talking about, like the message gets distorted, and and even from the point of, I guess, being decisive in decisions that shape the rest of our lives. It's those decisions can also be those agreements that we've made that we continue to roll with, because maybe the message was distorted in our subconscious. Maybe our father said something this way, but we took it that way, whatever it is. And even more so, we get, like, I was chatting to a friend yesterday, and talking about how, man, so many humans, like, so myself included, like, we're all trying to say the similar thing. We all have similar sort of values and principles. We all care about similar sort of things. Most of us, there's a few, like, that maybe don't, but we're all very similar, trying to say the similar sort of things. And then when you find out, sometimes you go, oh, like, I'm arguing with someone, but we're basically arguing about the same thing, but we seem to be on such opposite sides. And when you look at a world that over the last few years has become, like, more divisive, it's like you realize, well, actually the message is getting distorted somewhere. Like, we're trying to, we care about similar sort of things, we're trying to say similar sort of things, but we're so polarized on what the label is. And that deep work, that subconscious, whether you call it hypnotherapy, whether you call it this, whether you call it ancient, Indian American technique here, whatever it is, my friend was saying this, like, people will get hung up on the practitioner person who's doing it, like, oh, I don't like that guy, or the name, the label of what the practice, the work is. And isn't it amazing? It's like we get hung up on that, and we're like, hey, we don't even know the origins of this. This could have come 1,000 years earlier, but this new guy is touting it as this technique and using it this way, and we get so hung up on what it is. And it's like the point is, does it work? And I guess that takes us back to the implementation. Like, it's not all about the information. It's not all about who said it. It's not all about what church I have to join just to have it. It's like, I need the help. I want the help. How do I get the help?
Yeah. And how do I get the help? I want to just add, Jan made another comment. The important part is that your mind distorts it to your vision of the world at that time. And I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but I came up with a quote and I posted it on social media, and I said, there are worlds beyond number right here on Earth. And the point in saying that, or coming to that realization, was really to point to, Kyle, you live in your world, Jan lives in his world, and Malcolm lives in his world, and whoever else is watching, we all have our own little worlds that we construct. Now, some of that information is given to us from our parents and some of it is not. But when we're basing decisions, or we're making decisions, we almost have to really take a look at the deep underlying thing and really dive into, I think that, well, at least my new belief is to really dive into the feelings. What did it feel like when I succeeded last time? How did I do it? What do I really love? What did I do when I felt those feelings? Because if I've done it before, I can do it again. And sometimes I think we forget that, or we get into like that confirmation bias of, oh no, we can't, I've already failed and I'm just going to keep failing again and again and again. And while that is true, I will fail again and again and again. I will also succeed because I failed. like we can get really stuck. And maybe if it's okay with you, I'll bring in the poem because it speaks to that a little bit. And I called this one, oh, thank you. I called this one Predictions. How do you know the story of how this goes? How do you know the sad story you tell yourself will come to pass? Some people say they know because they predicted something else in their life. Some people know because they think hindsight is really 2020. What if I said hindsight is not 2020? It is only ever confirmation bias. You can only look back to validate where you are now and say, I predicted that. It's not true. Your mind, you see, it tricks you. So when things get hard, remember to love what is and to believe the best is yet to come. After all, how do you know it's not?
Love that. And I love your play on words. And
Thank you.
it's true. It's what we're saying about, I guess, and it's cool that now we've got, a third person on the podcast almost. Jan has like kind of joined with his commentary, and
Yeah.
it's like it's sparking, and that's the cool thing about this sort of format. But yeah, I love it. Can you give it to us again?
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
Do you have two poems today?
No, just the one, actually. I know.
Well,
Sometimes I
God
surprise you.
damn, did this twice.
It was long.
Why we
Well,
need
it's
it
longer than
again?
most of the ones I write. So, how do you know the story of how this goes? How do you know the sad story you tell yourself will come to pass? Some people say they know because they predicted something else in their life. Some people know because they think hindsight is really 2020. What if I said hindsight is not 2020? It's only ever confirmation bias. You can only look back and validate where you are now and say, I predicted that. It's not true. Your mind, you see, it tricks you. So when things get hard, remember to love what is and believe the best is yet to come. After all, how do you know it's not?
Love it.
So
Love it.
even in that decision making, though, sometimes I think we make decisions with the belief that they're going to turn out exactly how we think they're supposed to turn out, and we have these expectations and we put all this pressure on that working. And other times I think it is the right decision and we get to learn something. And I'm more concerned, I think, if someone is really following what they're feeling called to, because even though it might be hard, it's a more rewarding path, right? Like that challenge. It's almost like the challenge becomes necessary for growth.
Yeah. And that's a great point that I wanted to bring up about feelings, right? Because you mentioned about feelings, and for me, I was thinking about this a lot yesterday, and I was thinking about like, okay, when fair weather selling, where it's good and where like times are going well, and chapters are rolling out of your book and it's all flowing, but then there's probably going to be a lot more times where it's, man, like I'm just like, how do I get through this and those are all the decisions that are going to play out the rest of your life, because the easy decisions almost come through autonomously. It's like, yeah, no, I know it's not good for me to stay up and drink all night, or I know, like, whatever it is, like, that, so then you don't do it, on your own. But where it starts to be a problem is you get around different people in your environment and peer pressure, and then that decision becomes, like we were saying, distorted, and then, oh, wait a minute, maybe I'll just have a couple more, and then like, I don't really have to worry about writing tomorrow. And so you can see how, like, sometimes, like, I look at feelings very differently, and it's probably very unpopular, or not of the modern times, but I look at them as like, they almost can be they can be tricksters in a lot of ways, because, like, most of the time, like, before I go and work out, I don't ever feel like working out, like, my feelings are like I don't want to do this. This sucks. I'm gonna sweat. I'm gonna hurt myself. This is gonna be painful. This is a BS. Like, what are you doing? Just go. And then my mind will then, like, so my feelings will be like, oh, and my mind will be like, okay, now let's create a plot twist where he doesn't have to work out. You shouldn't work out. You've got to do those proposals. You've got to send those, like, you just don't have enough time. Oh, yeah, maybe you're right. Like, where we could all do a quick, like, 10-minute workout or something. Like, so that's where, like, for feelings for me. And then one decision I would say to shape the rest of your life would be to choose the actions, to choose the disciplines, to choose the agreements you've made rather than the feelings. And for me, it'd be something like, say, getting on the podcast. So me and you both decided every Friday, let's do a podcast for around about an hour. Let's bring some poems in. Let's talk about a chapter of my book. Let's talk about poems that you've boutique written, which is amazing, which is something that I'm just like, when I tell people about it, I'm like, this is so cool. And it combines our two books, And so for me, it's like, okay, great. But to be honest, it doesn't mean that every Friday, like, my feelings are saying, let's jump on, like, this is great, like, don't worry about the 1,000 other things you got to do. Like the episode when I was on the train, it was like, I was like, man, like, I know I told myself earlier that you can do this, that you got to stick to, to the print, to what your agreements, your word. You got to stick to your word. But I'm like, man, I just don't feel comfortable right now doing this on the train, even though I tested myself. I said I'll do it, But I think, like, sometimes for me, a lot of the time, I've got to be really conscious of that voice and those feelings and the kind of the self trickery the mind will play,
Yeah.
And if anybody's written a book, started a business, any sorts of things, but writing a book's got an interesting part of it because there's this part where you're flowing and you're like, you're King Kong, you're taking over the world, and then there's a second part where it's like, man, you ain't who do you think you are? What do you like? All those sorts of those doubts come in. But I reckon, and that's a part of it. Like, the decisions that will shape the rest of your life. Doesn't mean that you'll decide and then it's like, okay, every day I'm going to get up, I'm going to make my baked goods, I'm going to have my coffee every day. Like, all the customers are going to come in and they're just going to be extra special to me and it's just going to be extra fantastic. It's like, no, there's going to be days where you're like, this damn shop, I want to throw it in the bin, I want to burn it down, I want to get my insurance money, I don't know what. Like, there's going to be those rough days. And I think what's really important is to reevaluate and maybe take the time away or create distance from you and the activity you're doing and consider, okay, why am I doing this? What's the point? What's the cause? Does this align with my purpose? Does this align with me wanting to reach my full potential in this lifespan? What am I doing this for? And I think that is really where, and then you go, okay, great. I know I've got a headache, but I've got to show up. Or I know, like, I feel a little bit tired or I'm not sure what value I'm going to bring today, but I've got to show up anyway. I've got to show up anyway. And I think that's really what's going to actually shape the rest of your life is there's going to be a lot more of maybe those days than the pretty colorful teddy bear days.
Yeah, those values-led decisions, right? And those values-led feelings that come with it. So there was a study done, and I think I might sneeze. Oh my goodness. My friend just did that yesterday. No, earlier today. It was earlier today. Okay, it had. They did a study.
I feel robbed.
I know. Got to miss it. It's talked about in the book Transcend by Lieberman, I think is the no. It's in Social by Lieberman. Anyway, so what they did is they had these people go in for non-smoking. So I'll just read this paragraph. How could we tell which was right? People's words, their medial prefrontal cortex responses, or perhaps neither? Luckily, each of the ads ended with a specific request of viewers. Call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. That's the National Cancer Institute anti-smoking hotline. And through our public health partners on this project, we were able to find out how many people called this number after seeing one of the ad campaigns. As it turned out, people's medial prefrontal cortexes were prescient. Each of the ad campaigns was successful, but they differed in how much. Campaign B, the one people said would do the best, increased the number of calls tenfold. Campaign A, the one people said would do the next best, doubled the number of calls that came in. But Campaign C, the one that people said would do the worst and that the medial prefrontal cortex said would do the best, actually increased call volume more than 30 times over. Campaign C was more than 3 times better than the next best campaign. So that tells me we really have to dig into those values and those feelings and those beliefs before, not beliefs, the values and the feelings, right? Because the beliefs, they're just thoughts. They believed that a certain ad was going to do better, and it did great. It did fine, but not compared to the one that there was resistance on. Oh, that's going to be the worst one. So sometimes I think we don't consciously know. So how do we know when our medial prefrontal cortex is telling us to do something? I'm wondering if there might be that little push of or resistance. I don't know.
Yeah, 100%. It's I mean, there is going to be so much resistance, and I think that's no one tells you that at the start, and I think it's maybe a good thing. Like when you start a business or you start a book or you start something, you don't have those thoughts, and like someone was telling me, the person actually that helped me to do the crowdfunding campaign, which was like when I did that, I was waking up in the middle of the night thinking about the book, going through like how am I gonna, like the campaign, and what do I need to do, and how do I shift it, and all those sorts of things, and it was very, very challenging, and like I think my body was like put out, like it was a lot of like, and it wasn't necessarily physical work, but it was just banging against the wall, just showing up, and nobody tells you how challenging or how many things could go wrong and all that sort of stuff at the start, because if they did, you'd probably be like, well, I'm not doing that. Like, I'm gonna bloody go and do something a little bit lower than my potential, because striving for my potential has a lot of pain and challenges with it. But the other thing is that it has a lot of rewards, and there is that thing of like, if you want that reward, like it comes through a lot of sweat and challenge and like not necessarily the greatest sort of feelings or emotions or frustrations, and it's so that comfort, it's that comfort zone. It's so hard because like it doesn't feel right, but the outcome is so important that you do it anyway. And it's a challenging thing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times people forget, if they, like it looks good to take the easier path, right? It looks good to do that, or it seems easier. Guess what? There's still going to be challenges. Why? Because we're alive and that's what we do here. Like we, like.
But just pick your challenges.
Yeah, and I think there's something to staying true to who you are and what your values are, and choosing something in alignment that you feel that you have purpose for, because that purpose, there's some energy in that that helps get through the challenge, right?
Yeah.
Oh, well, okay, this challenge is here and this is hard and it totally sucks, and I'm going to keep pressing on because I know I have a purpose here, and I'm doing it because I have a purpose. Yes. And I think sometimes, just even socially, we all want to go the easy route, but that's normal, right? That's exactly what our brain does, makes it easy, but I don't think we're getting any happier with easy.
No. And reminding us that, like, and that's where we can do the investigative work, or we can do, we've got the workbook that's coming out. We can do the work, because through that we can investigate, oh, wait a minute, I had that really joyous time after I sweated and put in the work, and then, and just keep reminding your mind, and making it aware, because you can have your reactionary mind, that's like, no, I don't want to do it. Oh no, and then you can have oh, wait a minute, like, let me just ascend that a little bit, ascend that little emotional experience, and just go, wait, the last time I did some exercise. The last time I, read a book, what happened? Oh yeah, I got a lot of insights. Okay, all right, I'll start another book. And it's just, it takes that sort of like reminder, not rather than a memory of like, oh, the pain or the like a reminder. But
Well, I don't know those cold showers. I mean, when
I
I
love the
turn
cold shower.
when I or when at first getting in, it's like, oh look, we got more free girls that want to chat.
Oh, what?
We're getting pinged on YouTube.
There we go.
But sometimes, I just don't want to get it. Like, I think I don't, and then I go, oh, but I feel better when I'm done. And so that knowledge that I feel better when I'm done keeps me getting into the cold shower.
Yes.
It's what keeps me doing meditation. What else does it, doing my physical therapy that I need to do, because it's so much more fun, when I'm feeling good. And sometimes I have to get through that brain, that brain part you're talking about.
Yeah. But then, like for me, I work out, like I work out because, like how it's going to make me feel, but like a big part of it is like that mental fog goes away. Like it's not so much the body and the looks. And I mean, like every part of workout is nice. It's like, okay, cool. Every part of it's nice. But I think it's more what it does for the mind. Like exercise just has this amazing ability. And for some reason, every time I exercise, I need a notepad close by. Like all this stuff just comes gushing out of my mind. And maybe like I've got like these different pathways and thinking philosophical, and then I listen to this, and maybe that could be a part of it. I listen to a lot of books and read a lot of stuff throughout every day. So maybe I'm consuming all that, and then I'm deliberating it, like I'm looking at it in my mind. But then when I work out, it just cleans up the pathways and they synchronize together. And I go, oh, that lesson is those two books together, and that is those two videos together, or that video and that book together kind of express this philosophy, and that's interesting. Let's go into that. So I think that's what exercise does as well. Obviously, it gives you endorphins, it gives you all sorts of great things. But for me, like, it's just the mental cleanse almost.
Yeah, that's I think what you're describing for me happens in meditation, and or when I'm, when I used to be able to walk a lot, things would, because I would be just relaxing, just breathing, looking at the trees, being in nature, and connecting back to myself versus staying. I worry a bit about the the amount of time now that I've learned a little bit more about, social things and transcending and things like that. I worry about the phones and how we're not letting ourselves get quiet, because there's something that happens in the brain when we do get quiet. And it's really, really important. In fact, socially, that's where we start processing all our social interactions, when the brain is quiet, And so it's no wonder to me on some level why people struggle socially right now, and why there's this feeling of being alone, because I can go and look at all the Facebook posts, all the Instagram posts. I'm actually kind of glad I get a little bit of a headache scrolling. So I don't do it very much.
Yeah.
Because I think it helps me process. I get to back away and just ponder,
Yes. Yeah. But you know how to do that, and you're very attuned with the value that it brings. What would you say to someone that maybe doesn't like, so for you it's the meditation, for me it's more the exercise. Like, what would you say to someone that doesn't, that is struggling with the value point? Like, because our money will go to, like, we will give money when we perceive something has more value than the amount that we're giving. We will give time, we'll give energy, we'll give commitment when we perceive the value to be more than what we're giving. So what would you say to someone who maybe can't see the value?
I think I would ask them a question. When was the last time you felt like you had a good maybe like a good understanding of the people around you? When was the last time? Oh gosh, I'm trying to think of a really good question. When was the last time you felt hopeful and what was happening?
Yeah.
When was the last time you felt courageous, and how did you overcome that challenge, right? Because in order to be courageous, so I think I would just start digging into, what's the most meaningful thing to you. This afternoon or earlier today, I asked the kids, what went well this week because of you?
It's a great question.
And yeah,
Positive
go ahead,
reviews.
answer it. They struggled with it a little bit, so I'd be so Kyle, what went well this week? If it's okay if I ask that question.
So yeah, and look, firstly, what you're saying is great. I think, and they struggle like I'll struggle now probably with it because don't do it often. It's like anything. Like when you don't do it often, it's like, oh, it doesn't mean the thing doesn't work or it doesn't add value. It's like, well, I don't do it often enough to actually. I usually go to bed. Just before I go to bed, I beat myself up for all the mistakes I made in the day, or oh, I shouldn't have said that. That's embarrassing. Or I'm not necessarily saying me, but like most of the time, like that is the one moment in our day where we get a chance to just have some respite. Like we just go, okay, let me just, and you go, let me just go to bed now. It's like, wait a minute, like you haven't done your day's review. You haven't checked it out, and that's where it is really good to actually write down or ask those questions. So for me, look, managing multiple different things and like developing new business and ventures and different sort of things. And so sometimes it can seem pretty chaotic, or one day I'm doing this planning, the next day I'm doing this photo shoot, the next day I'm doing this thing over here, and it can seem like, okay, like am I doing circles or am I going ahead? And so sometimes like a project that I probably wouldn't be doing all the time, but something as simple as just putting my books and then like putting them in the post for the people that have pledged to the crowdfunding campaign all that time ago, was something that was so nice because it was just a consistent task. It was just like bang, like very like simple. And sometimes your brain just wants those simple tasks, and maybe that's part of what working out is. It's like a lift, like that sort of stuff. So for me, being able to do that last night was really enjoyable, and knowing that, wow, like I'm actually putting this into a package and it's going out to someone, like it's going out to somebody in Sri Lanka, it's going to a family member in Europe, in South Africa, like in the US. It's kind of exciting. It's like, okay, so this is now distributing, and I'm distributing it, not just Amazon. Like I'm distributing it. So that was quite a big win, I guess. Like a good feeling, and then also signing it. So like writing a nice message and things like that. And I've got to get one to you. Remember?
Yes, sir. I
Leave
love
address.
that it was really interesting. I just want to point this out for our listeners and our watchers, is you first went to what you hadn't done well.
Yeah.
You totally went to, well, this is what it's like you wanted to like, it almost probably, did it feel like bragging a little bit then that you did something well?
Yeah, like I think, well, yeah, and it definitely does at the start. It does definitely.
Yeah.
Like if you don't share, if you don't, I've become more vocal and sharing things online and promoting myself. And if you're not a self promoter, it does feel like that bragging, and especially in Australian culture, in tall poppy syndrome culture, it's like, oh, you think you're something good, do you? I'm like, well, God did, like,
Well, the reason I wanted to point it out was, though, for our listeners to see that even when, like, me and you were up here, we're doing this, that if we're not constantly checking in with what we're doing well, what felt good, what's meaningful, at first we're the way we're going to go is negative. And I want to say that's really normal. So that's why I checked in, like, hey, if you want to answer the question, it's okay, because I didn't know what was going to happen, because there were two kids I asked as I walked in to the school. One of them was like, "Oh, I know exactly what I did." Like, he knew. And then the girls, I had to downgrade my question for the other one to say, I think I downgraded it twice, and it became, well, what didn't suck because of you this week, right? And
Oh, wow. That's cool, man.
because we had to find a positive, and eventually it was telling jokes in an emergency room, because it had been a really hard week. So some weeks it's going to be really hard to find those good things, and I would have labeled that as a that went well because of you. Like, look at how many people smiled, but it's how she perceived it. So
That's the
yeah,
beautiful humanity in all of us, to
yeah.
look for the light in a dark time.
Yeah, and I learned that from Brian Fretwell. Amazing. He's got a ton
Yeah.
of TikToks out there, but the questions that's where it's like, when we're talking about decisions, maybe find someone that can ask you questions that can help bring out your light so you can see it. Like they can mirror it back. Like right now, it took a few minutes for you to find the good thing, right? And he has the company Finding Good, but it took a few minutes for you to find the good thing, and at first you went negative. So that's it's normal. I do it too.
Mm.
I'm sitting in a conversation with one of my daughters today, and I'm going all negative. And then I'm having to slow it down and be like, what's really good about this? She's telling me. And while I don't like what she's saying and it hurts, she's telling me. And isn't that beautiful? Not in the toxic way, but in the loving way. I'm going
Yeah.
to continue to love, because she's in a painful spot, and while she's telling me, she's not hurting me, you know?
Yeah. And sometimes, like, part of going to the negative, like sometimes it's like, okay, I'm I'm unsatisfied with what I've achieved, and I know I can do better, and and also I've got high expectations. And to me, I look at both those things as good. It's like, hey, wait a minute. If I just say, look, don't expect to get all the books out today, or don't expect to, like, get them to people before Christmas, and be satisfied with the fact that you've got the envelopes, be satisfied with this part of the job. And it's like, wait a minute, if I'm playing those mental games, then I'm not going to get the book out to people. I'm not going to feel that level of immense satisfying feelings once I actually do the completion of the job, And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's what it is for me. It's like I do enjoy the steps, So last night was a step, bang, and then I'm very aware that today there's another step. I need to go to the post office and make sure I've got some of the documents right for sending books international, and those sorts of things, And then I can seal those up and send them off. So I know there's another step, but through each step you get more clarity, And I think that's the strength of, I guess, decisions that shape the rest of your life. It's like, make the first decision. And people don't want to, like, people find two things really, really hard. And I think, like, I'm talking about, I guess, two major things. I think they find, like, money and decisions really hard. Like making a decision, like is a thing that people struggle with, because we're so terrified of, like you said, the wrong decision or the negative outcome, those sorts of things. And, like, when you make a decision, that's a powerful act, and that's a step into your future, and a step into the clarity of what's going to shape the rest of your life. And it's that momentum. It's okay. And I think a great lesson, and a great aspect of what you're saying, and pull it away from the message, this could well lead into homework, but you talking about your successes, talking about what did I do good, what did I do well. That's you saying, hey, I'm becoming more clear on the expectations I have, the person I'm becoming, the vision that I want for my life. I'm becoming more clear because I'm becoming aware of what I'm doing right. And then when you know what you're doing right, you can know what you're doing wrong. It's like, oh, if I sit around for the rest of the day and I don't get these letters out, I know that's wrong because I know what was right last night was me actually writing the letter, like doing the signing, getting so happy, getting excited. So I was on a high, but then if I don't put any energy into them today, then it will make me bummed down, and then it's the weekend, and then I can't do it for another week. You know what I mean. So there's all these little micro decisions that will definitely shape the rest of our lives, but also impact the momentum that we decide to move through each day with.
Yeah, and I love how you said, really pointed to the feeling. It felt good when I did
Yeah,
this and I was on a high. And if I don't do this, then I'm going to be over here in this low. It's almost like you knew what you needed to do because you made the decision already. And now it's like pointing to that good feeling and
yeah,
knowing that, you know what, the last time I didn't do it, I got this really low, which makes it wrong for you because you don't like that feeling and
yeah,
you'd rather be over here,
yeah.
and
It's all choices.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's we sometimes do it to ourselves, the success and the failure, you know?
Oh, we big time. we turn that we turn that revolver around and we put it in front of our face most of our life.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
and it's well, that's just part of I think that's part of the challenge though. I think if we're here to learn and grow, right? And that hiding, because I used to hide away. I thought I had no value. I thought I had, I was very depressed right after my disability came on. I got these messages from society that I couldn't do anything. So when I made
Wow.
the decision to start the podcast, I was terrified. And there was a feeling behind it. There was actually somebody had come in and said something. The caregiving company had come in and said, we're not going to help you be human. We're only going to basically treat you like a dog. We'll feed you, bathe you, do
God,
some light house cleaning, and we'll take you to your doctor's appointments. And I was like, that's not human.
that's
That,
horrific.
and they're sitting here and they can't help me do things that I want to do. Are you kidding me? Like, who does that? And
They're
so,
limiting their potential and their ability
well,
because anyone can treat you like a human. That's ridiculous.
and they were teaching their caregivers this company was, and I was like, this is wrong. And so that feeling welled up in me. And I was like, absolutely not. We are all human, every single one of us. And I think we're all here on this earth to help each other be human. And that means that we're going to go through challenges. And sometimes that challenge is the fire that gives us the rage, which may not be bad. It can actually be good, that propels us to the next step. So because I really want to start this conversation around challenges. Thank heaven for challenges, because I sure wouldn't know what I know today had I not gone through it. Do I like them? No, I do not always like them. I've got some that I've really faced that were really tough in this last year. Just know that whatever decision you make, if it's based on those values and those feelings and that love for humanity, for whatever that means to you, that will take you, that will propel you to the next step and the next step when it gets hard, because it will get hard. Everything does.
I just want to say you're a huge inspiration to me, Angela. And I'm sure to many people out there and anybody that's struggling with disability or anything in life really, like should take a lot away from that. I think at the end of the day, if we're looking for purposes or we're looking for decisions that can shape the rest of our life, it's going to be right and wrong, like look for the fight that you want to fight. Look for, and unfortunately in today's world, there's so many charlatan, politics does this brilliantly. They know how to just get you to get upset or move for something, and then, hey, by the way, if you vote for me, I'll make sure this goes away, and they get in and nothing changes. So I think there's so many like incorrect fights, or fights that are not necessarily productive, and are just confusing on our planet in today's world. But like, I think righting a wrong, like that's a big wrong. It's like when the cigarette companies paid doctors to say cigarettes were like the bomb. And I think there's even a movie about it,
Doctors prescribed them.
yeah, and there's a whole thing about it, like, hey, this is good stuff. It's going to be real good for your health, and like, you're going to be cool, and chicks will dig you, and all that sort of stuff, all that programming, and that's in like famous movies, and like lots of stuff. I mean, you even look at like engagement, like in proposing and getting on a knee, that came through programming as well. So I think like what you're talking about there, like writing I think if we can get out into the world, bring more light into the world, like you said the jokes in the emergency center. If we can right the wrong, I mean, right, there's many wrongs out there to right, and be clear with them, and and actually see them. Don't be deceived by the wrong. Don't be deceived by, like the one that's like trickery, and then you're fighting with your fellow man over something that's so dumb that whilst you're fighting with it, like that person's getting away with something evil, So there is evil on the planet. There is dark things there. Like, you just look at something like child trafficking, and the fact that is at such alarming numbers. And there's a great charity over in Queensland which is on the east side of Australia, called Destiny Rescue. And they actually help save children all through, I can't believe I said children's. They help save kids all through Southeast Asia, who have been trafficked. So there is evil and darkness. And I think if you're looking for, a decision that's going to shape the rest of my life, a purpose, and I think purpose is going to be like some of the topics that come up in our next sort of shows, but look at maybe what wrongs you can right in the world. And, like for me, that light you talk about, like I remember being in hospital, and there's this game, lots of South Africans play it, called, and it's not necessarily a South African card game, but it's called Rummy. And my granny from South Africa was visiting. She was there when I came out of, like, when I was in ICU, and she was playing Rummy with me. And like, that is such a special moment that I hold in my heart, because it was the light, the little flicker of light in the darkness. And I think if we can all go out into the world and try and be that more and more, then we're going to have good feelings about our day. We can like review our day and go, wow, I tried my best today to right a wrong, and I tried to be the light in a dark environment. So I think like that's maybe that's the homework. I don't know. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I think we've put so many questions on the table. I think we started around 28 minutes with questions. So I think we've probably,
questions are good, man.
I know they're fantastic. We've put so many on the table. And we'll put them in the show notes for next week. I think really importantly, what I want to say is, feel that feeling. What did it feel like when you felt good before? What were you doing? Where did you find joy? What matters to you? And just really dig into those feelings, and try to really, like we were talking about early on, access that medial prefrontal cortex, where it's like, no, don't go that way. And it's like, absolutely. Because that's kind of how I felt about the podcast. Like, oh no, don't go that way. But I had to go that way. Like, like my brain was saying, oh no, don't do that. But my heart was saying, absolutely, I have to.
Well, that's a great point. And this is probably like what I wanted to mention a bit earlier, and it relates to the chapter, the chapter's repair or replacement, and I guess how to be decisive, shape the rest of your life. I think a big part of that, exactly what you're saying, is playing it out, and maybe that can be something like, and look, maybe this might be homework for another show, but if you play out what could happen, what's going to happen if I don't do the podcast? What's going to happen if I don't search for my full potential and my purpose? What's going to happen if I don't write the poem, for this episode? like that little thing will knock on effect. And I was actually listening to a video, and I was talking about this, and was saying you might think, and I do it, like I think most humans do it, but you might think slamming snooze on the alarm button like is just one small decision, but you've made an agreement, literally the one agreement to start the day, saying that mediocrity or like it doesn't really matter, it's not really that important, like it doesn't really matter, it's okay. And then you're like looking for inspiration in your day, you're looking for this like this excitement, this kind of like your vitality in your day. It's like, but you've already made an agreement. And it's like, well, if you like keep making that agreement that it doesn't matter, it's very hard to be passionate and purposeful and thriving in your life. And I think that's where you play it out. You go, okay, what happens if I don't do the podcast? What if I say this isn't important? What if I say it's not important that I do a poem for this episode? That's going to then impact the next, and that's how the dominoes fall. Yeah. On the opposite side, the dominoes go the other way as well. Like, oh great, I've made another podcast. We did another episode. Wow, looking back, we've done 10 of these. Wow, that's awesome. How did that happen? So I think really playing it out, and I guess those questions that you asked for homework is how we can actually play it out and see what outcome would come from either doing what is necessary or neglecting what is necessary.
Yeah. And you asked some really fantastic questions. Like I said, those were around 28 minutes. So, because I looked, I'm like, I have to remember where he's asking questions when we started the questions.
Note it down. That's why I grabbed my notebook. I got to note some things down.
I love it. Well, we're at our hour. It's been a fantastic conversation once again. You guys check out the homework. You got this. I'm Angela.
I'm Kyle.
And this is the destiny of your soul.
That's what it is. That's what it be. In the destiny of your soul.
That's right. We'll see you next week.